Welcome to week 4 of Do You Think Christianly? We are on our exploration of the Christian worldview. In week 1, we went through an introduction to worldviews. In weeks 2 and 3, we went through description of the major worldviews. These lessons were recorded and you can find them on the Quincy Free Methodist Church YouTube page. Today we were going to start through the Christian worldview, but I decided to do a little side trip on the Bible since it's our primary source. So that's what we're going to do today. From here, we'll go into defining the Christian worldview. We'll compare and contrast it with the other major worldviews. We're going to explore different ways to articulate ideas in light of the Christian worldview and apply the Christian worldview to some of the issues that we face. These are the resources that I've used as I've compiled this information. So week 1, we learned everyone has a worldview, that their worldview determines their values, and that thus values determine behavior. And as Christians, we should have a Christian worldview. Many professing Christians do not have a Christian view of the world. The Christian worldview is informed by the Bible, and when we use the Bible as our primary source, we really want to have integrity in how we read it and good hermeneutics. And we're remembering that the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all its people belong to Him. We went then into week 2, and we began looking at the major worldviews, the first of which was naturalism. Naturalism asserts that the space-time continuum is all that there is, and that all things developed within it from natural processes. There are also the worldviews of transcendentalism, or pantheism is another way to maybe describe that. And it has the view that there's a universal one, and all things are part of that, including humans. And that one is cycling towards that oneness and everything, that it's fragmented and that it needs to come back together in that one. We also went through the world's major theistic religions, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, and they assert that there's a God who created all things and is the source of knowledge, ethics, and morality, and that we humans are eternal and will spend eternity either with or without God. Now, I'm not making the claim that these 3 religions are the same, and we'll talk about that as we go through, but they do have some common view. So even though they would say there's a God who created all things, they don't really think of God in quite the same way or what it takes to spend eternity with God. And like I said, we'll go through that as we go. We also went through postmodernism, and we looked at the history of the world, went through a pre-modern era, a modern era, into postmodernism. Postmodernism rejects the idea that reality can be known in any meaningful way. It sees all things as subjective, that there's no objective truth, and it finds truth through personal narratives, which become a source of that person's truth. And its chief value is tolerance and inclusiveness. So today we're going to start through Christianity. If I'm going to think Christianly, I must know what Christianity is. This is another one of these Barna surveys where they found in 2005, they found this, that only 10% of adults, now these are Christian adults, not all adults, but 10% of Christian adults agree that absolute moral truth exists, that the Bible is the source of that truth, that Jesus lived a sinless life, that God created the universe and continues to rule it, that salvation is a gift from God, Satan is real, that Christians have a personal obligation to share the gospel, and that the Bible is accurate in all of its teaching. And I gleaned this from this book, Making Sense of Your World, on page 1. So Christianity, it's going to answer the questions: who is God? What is the grand narrative of the world and reality, and how am I to respond? We are continuing in the historic Orthodox biblical theology that has been the continued stand of the church for the last 2,000 years. There's a lot of versions of Christianity that have cropped up. And really, the church has always had theological challenges. And we face many more today, but we're going to continue in the Orthodox view. That's the version we're going to assert. So Christianity developed out of Judaism. We have a robust historical account. The Bible is the authoritative account, and there are lots and lots of extra biblical history and writings available to us. Christianity asserts that God is real, not just something we conjure up as a result of our belief or desire for it to be true. And we see God as foundational to Christianity, that he's a personal being involved in his world. He's transcendent, he's triune, sovereign, all-powerful, all-knowing, and we have a long list of his attributes, some of which are righteousness, holy, just, loving, merciful, and faithful. The idea that he's transcendent is important, that he's outside of space, he's outside of the universe, and he's outside of time, because time is part of our dimension or our universe. And this allows him to know the future, to hear all prayers simultaneously, and this is how he can be powerful and sovereign over all. And one of the things in naturalism is the idea of the Big Bang Theory. If there was a beginning to the universe, there had to be a first cause of that, and that first cause had to come from outside of what was created. So the Trinity, we see God the Father, Jesus the Son, and the Holy Spirit as the Godhood. And we see the Bible as God's revelation. So if that's true, if the Bible is our authoritative account, if it's God's revelation, then what is it? How do we need to think about the Bible? Because it should define my view of and for the world. Now, we could spend a whole class on this. There's books and comprehensive disciplines of things like textual criticism, and we don't have time to do that, but we're going to try to touch the highlights. What we believe about the Bible is that it's true, that it's not a set of myths with a moral, or it's not mystical or an allegory or even a rule book. God has and still is communicating with his people. We were created by him for a purpose. And our relationship with him starts with him making himself known to us. So we have the Bible. It's our source for who God is, what he's done, who we are, and what we are to do. So what is it then? Where did it come from? How did we get it? How is it preserved? And ultimately, can we trust it? This is the stand that the Bible is the actual error-free Word of God, and this is what they mean by inerrancy. And you can find the details of that in the Chicago Statement. You can go out on the internet and find that. It's several pages long. When Paul writes to Timothy, this is what he says. All Scripture is breathed out by God and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for correction, and for training in righteousness, that the man of God may be complete, equipped for every good work. Peter also addresses this issue in one of his letters. For we did not follow cleverly devised myths when we made known to you the power and coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, but we were eyewitnesses of his majesty. Skipping to 18, we ourselves heard this very voice born from heaven, for we were with him on the holy mountain, and we have the prophetic word more fully confirmed, to which you will do well to pay attention, as to a lamp shining in a dark place, until the day dawns and the morning star rises in your hearts, knowing this, first of all, that no prophecy of Scripture comes from someone's own interpretation, for no prophecy was ever produced by the will of man, but men spoke from God as they were carried along by the Holy Spirit. But we do not have a blind faith. We have a historical faith. We believe in the reality of what is written in the Bible. It's a historical claim that the Bible was written by eyewitnesses or on the testimony of eyewitnesses. And it was written at a time when eyewitnesses could have either confirmed or denied the accuracy of the accounts. We also know that the apostles were either imprisoned or martyred. They would not have done that for a lie. In fact, Chuck Colson is one of the things that he spoke of his Watergate experience. The way he thought about conspiracies, because he claims that, during Watergate, they couldn't keep it under wraps until somebody decided to give up information for self-preservation. So, and we could also corroborate the biblical narrative from events and people, cities, civilizations that we can verify from history and archaeology. So when the Bible talks about places like Jericho, we find that there is a Jericho. Jesus' death and the claim of his resurrection is a historical event, and it is recorded in other historical documents. In fact, we find a reference in the works of Josephus. Now there was about this time Jesus, a wise man, if it be lawful to call him a man, for he was a doer of wonderful works, a teacher of such men as received the truth with pleasure. He drew over to him both many of the Jews and many of the Gentiles. He was the Christ, and when Pilate, at the suggestion of the principal men amongst us, had condemned him to the cross, those that loved him at first did not forsake him, for he appeared to them alive again the third day, as the divine prophets had foretold these, and 10,000 other wonderful things concerning him, and the tribe of Christians, so named from him, are not extinct at this day. One of the things is being able to verify the history is when we find that the people and places that the Bible talks about actually existed. And there was actually some controversy about it because they said, well, there's no evidence that there was ever a Pontius Pilate. Then in 1961, they discovered this stone that had the name of Pontius Pilate on it at Caesarea Maritima, and there's a picture of it right there. We also know that Jesus refers to the Old Testament as God's Word. And so we have the Bible consisting of the Old Testament, which is the Pentateuch, the first 5 books. There's the historical books, the prophetic books, and the wisdom or poetic books. And this Old Testament looks the same as the Jewish scriptures do. Now, if you were to see the Jewish scriptures, there might be some things you might not recognize, but that's only because we arrange them differently, not because the content is different. The Pentateuch is the first 5 books: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Then we have the historical books: Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther. We have these poetical or wisdom books like Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, and then the prophets. The major ones are called major merely because they're a larger body of work, they're longer: Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, and Lamentations, and then the minor prophets, which are the shorter writings, not the lesser writings: Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. And we can't really talk about the Old Testament without talking about the Septuagint. Alexander the Great was a Greek that conquered and spread Greek culture throughout the Mediterranean world by the time he had died in 323 BC. One of the things he came was he spread the Greek language. So the Greek language became the language of the Diaspora. Now, the Diaspora were the Jewish communities that had been dispersed throughout the world outside of Israel or outside of Jerusalem. And because they spoke Greek, it raised the need for a Greek translation of the Jewish scriptures. So in 250 BC, they commissioned a committee of 70 scholars, and this is where this term Septuagint, or the 70, comes from. And this was the Bible of Jesus and the apostles. This is the Bible that is quoted in the Gospels. And this is the Bible of the early church. Now, what you can see here is after Alexander the Great had spread Greek language and it became the language spoken all over the Mediterranean world, And then when the Romans came, they built roads and they enforced a certain kind of peace called the Pax Romana that allowed for free travel. And you can see how that really set the stage for the gospel and the Jesus message to go forth. We also have the New Testament, and it came about a little bit differently, but it's historical books, the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and Acts. And then there are the letters. Paul had some letters, James had one, John had some, Peter had some, and then there's a couple other letters, Hebrews and Jude. And then the book of Revelation. The New Testament, kind of one of the popular current thinking about that is that it was this giant chaotic mess with everyone vying for control. And this comes from books like the Da Vinci Code and all these YouTube and TikTok videos of accusations that people have, wondering where these missing gospels are. But that's not really an accurate picture of how the New Testament came about. It really was universally accepted and circulated. The books came early, and people felt, or they viewed them, the ones that should be included. And we have lists by the early church fathers, and it was finally at the Council of Laodicea that they sort of made a record of what was there. But that was not the first place these lists came about. These works were circulated, accepted, and listed by the early church fathers prior to this time. Some of the writings had a little bit longer journey, like Hebrews and James and some of the letters of John and Jude and Revelation. But there was a criteria for inclusion into the New Testament, and that was that they had to be apostolic, they had to be eyewitness accounts, they had to be early, and they had to be universally accepted. And once again, this is a really deep dive, and any good apologetics book that you pick up will give you all these different things in much more detail than I have. So if you pick up things like I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, new evidence that demands a verdict, a case for Christ, all these works, the ones that I'm using as a reference for this, Making Sense of Your World, there's many, many books. And if you can't find one, give me a call and I'd be happy to help you. One of the things we need to talk about is manuscript support. And why? Well, we don't have the originals. So if we don't have the originals, what do we have? So we're looking in manuscript support for quantity, quality, and a short time interval between the manuscript we have and the time that the information was written. It's generally accepted that the Bible's the best preserved document of the ancient world. One of the things that we have is the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in the desert by a Bedouin youth that threw a rock into a cave and heard the breaking of pottery. And the cave at Qumran is the most famous one of those. But they found fragments of every book of the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, except for Esther. And remarkably, they're identical to, or some of these are identical to the texts that we have today. Now, we don't have any New Testaments because these were really put away before the New Testament was written. And this here is one of the documents that is out of there. Now, this is a fragment that is dated either from 100 to 1 BC or BCE. And what it is a fragment of Genesis, and it is the first 3 days of creation. In addition, there's this amazing Isaiah scroll, and it is literally complete apart from a small number of damaged portions. And there it is right there. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Now, Krista Bontrager, she goes under the moniker of Theology Mom. She's really become one of my favorite Bible teachers, and she's got some YouTube videos. If you just go to her YouTube page and find her videos and search Bible, that go through some of these issues. Why do we have the books we do, and how did we get it? But I just stole a couple of her slides, and this is one of them. So in terms of the number of ancient manuscripts we have, you can see that we have tons of ancient Bible manuscripts. The closest thing to it is Homer's Iliad, and it has an interval of 500 years between when it was written and the oldest fragment. In the New Testament, we have some fragments that exist from within the first 250 years or so, and we have many, many manuscripts. One of the things I want us to think about, so when Paul writes to the Colossians, he tells them this: when this letter has been read among you, have it also read in the church of the Laodiceans, and see to it that you also read the letter from Laodicea. So even Paul's telling them, we can see that they would have copied their letter, sent it to Laodicea, and Laodicea would have done the same, and they would have circulated these writings. So really the accusation is it was one giant game of telephone, right? That was copied and copied and copied and copied, and it's transmitted all these errors. So we have no idea what the original manuscript was like. But what we do have, remember those 25,000 manuscripts? So I took her slide because I really didn't want to just redraw this, but you can see that you would have taken your first document and copied it, a couple copies, and then those would have been copied, and those would have been copied, and those would have been copies. So while they might have had a little error, so you can see in this one place where maybe only goes missing, and that gets translated all the way down. Well, you get to the bottom centuries later, and you have all these manuscripts that have come by all these different pathways. And then you can begin to compare them. And remember, they came through a different line, and they probably were in very different geological areas. So we might have one from Turkey, we might have one from Egypt, we might have one from Rome. And we can take all these end products and then compare them across each other, and we can get a really good picture of what that original document was. And we see some errors like this, the word only being missing. And there's a few places that the errors are more significant than that, but they're well known, and we can talk about them, and we can see that we get a really good idea of what the original text was in almost every case. So the manuscript evidence gives us really a robust picture of the Bible as it's been transmitted through the decades. And once again, there are scholarly books and whole disciplines that look at this idea of textual criticism, and you really can find a lay perspective of that if you are interested in doing a deeper dive. But let's be honest. Remember that 25,000 manuscripts. Really, many of those are not as old as we would like them to be. So if we want to look at the oldest fragments, we have more like 48, but they date from within 250 years. And this here is a fragment that is in this John Ryland's library in Manchester, England. It's called P52. And on the front side, it has John 18:31 through 33, and on the reverse side, 37 through 38. And it's Jesus' trial before Pilate. The other thing we have is this Codex Cyanaticus. Now, you can go to their website. Same with the Dead Sea Scrolls. They have a whole website with all these documents in it, and you can go to these places and look at them. But the Codex Cyanaticus was a manuscript of the Christian Bible that we have from the middle of the 4th century, the 300s. And it's a complete copy of the Christian New Testament. Now, the other thing we talk about is how the early church fathers references the books of the New Testament. And I picked this off of somebody's website, so I can't verify everything that's here, but It's a pretty amazing picture, but I thought I should verify something. So as you can see, we have all the books of the New Testament, and then it starts on the left with the earliest, Clement, and it goes through time, Justin Martyr, Polycarp, the Didache, and on and on and on. And then it talks about where they referenced the books of the New Testament, and we would be able to go through and verify these if we really wanted to. And so I have this book here that has all the church fathers on my Kindle, ante-Nicene, Nicene, and post-Nicene church fathers. And there's a lot of works there. So it was a difficult journey to make. But there's a quote from Justin Martyr. Concerning chastity, he uttered such sentiments as these: Whosoever looketh upon a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart before God. And if thy right eye offend thee, cut it out, for it is better for thee to enter the kingdom of heaven with one eye than having two eyes to be cast into everlasting fire. Now we know that Justin Martyr didn't write in English, so this was translated at some point, and we see that in the these and the thys there that, probably wasn't this year. And here's the verse in Matthew. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than your whole body to be thrown into hell. So then what are the reasons that we trust the New Testament? Well, we have this historical reliability of places and people, that there were really those people and there were really those places. We have historical references outside of the Bible to Jesus and the claim of his resurrection. They were written by eyewitnesses. These eyewitnesses recorded their failures in addition to their victories, so they didn't try to polish it up to make themselves look good. Many of them were martyred. Most of them were martyred. That these documents were generally held and quoted by the early church fathers. We have early manuscript evidence. We have the ability to look at the integrity of this text based on this wide scope of manuscripts that have come down to us. And that makes it testable. So then, we have an English Bible. And I wish we had a lot of time to talk about that, but we have many modern translations that came about from many translation committees. And we can easily engage with all translations easily. And we should, with more than one. So every time we come to a learning, we need to ask ourselves the questions. Jesus, in the Great Commission, he gave his disciples the directive to make disciples, to teach them all that I have commanded you, to observe all that I have commanded you. So the question then we always come down to is, what have I heard that I am to observe? So I want you to contemplate that as we go through our week. So next time we get together, Christianity, creation, fall, redemption, restoration. This is the grand narrative of Christianity. And there is no class on October 17th, but we'll see you again on October 24th. Thanks for being here.